Hello, Alex here, and in this video I want to talk about the TTArtisan Light Meter version 2 that I've been using for the last 2 or so months with pretty much all of my cameras. So let's get into it. When TTArtisan sent me a copy of their 100mm f2.8 bubble bokeh Trierplan lens in exchange for my review, they also sent me a copy of this Light Meter version 2 in black. They didn't ask for a video review on this thing, but I've really enjoyed using it, so I'm going to make a quick one anyway. But I am part of their affiliate program, even though they haven't directly sponsored and requested this video. And the links in the video description are affiliate links that I'll get a small kickback from if you buy this meter or anything else from the TTArtisan store. In brief, this unit from TTArtisan is a cold shoe light meter offering high precision and high accuracy in a small, lightweight and compact package for a fair price. The main and most obvious use cases for this meter for me are with my large format camera and my Rolleiflex SL66, neither of which have light meters built into them, and where it makes sense to have something nice and compact that I can just throw around rather than having to necessarily carry my Sekonic around all the time. Compared to the original version 1 from TTArtisan, this newer meter offers a clicked aperture dial and a slightly narrower form factor, some grooves on the side for some grip when handling the thing, increased precision when selecting your shutter speed with half stop instead of full stop increments, and a switch from CR2032 to CR1632 cells. Inside the box you get a full user manual with clear diagrams, a screwdriver whose purpose will be clear shortly, and the light meter itself. Coming in at 40 by 35 by 16 millimeters and only weighing about 35 grams, the body of the meter is very small and it's very easy to carry with you. The build quality is very good, being completely made from metal. From the button to the cold shoe to the dials to the housing itself, the whole thing is metal. The cold shoe allows it to fit on any camera that has a shoe via a friction fit, and it can be installed in 3 different positions to match the shape of your camera, making sure that you don't block your shutter speed dial or your focusing ring or any other control knob, for example. It has a metering cone with a 45-degree angle, so decently broad, but not ridiculously so broad that you're not able to pick out any particular subject to meter from. It's very easy for me to point this at a particular thing and take a meter reading without it being so narrow to be a spot meter, which for a general everyday meter is a bit too impractical for a lot of use cases. On the front, you've just got that metering window, and on the sides, you'll find those slightly grippy ridges. They aren't rubberized or anything, but they do provide a little extra grip when installing or removing the meter from your camera. On the bottom, you have the shoe and the various holes to install it in, and one extra screw near the rear opens the battery compartment. The meter takes a single CR1632 cell, not the most common by any means, and it promises about 60 hours of use on a single cell. And then on the back, the only thing you have is a button to take a meter reading. On the top, you'll see the indicator lights that tell you if your chosen settings are correct. It uses 3 indicators in various combinations to communicate whether your settings are overexposed, underexposed, nearly correct, or actually correct. And it's pretty simple, and it works in a way that's quite intuitive, or probably familiar to a lot of people based on how their own camera meters work. After 1 full minute of inactivity, the meter goes into a proper sleep mode, and you'll have to press the metering button to wake it up again. Then you have 10 seconds to read the indicators and translate the settings to your camera, or after those 10 seconds it goes into a sort of a nap mode where the indicator lights turn off, and you can within the next 10 seconds wake it back up again by changing the shutter or aperture setting, just to see how the settings that you've chosen affect your meter reading, which is nice if you're taking a meter reading not of a scene but of a specific subject, like a subject's face or a particular piece of wall or whatever, that you can see how your settings affect that without having to re-meter all over again. This gives a good balance between saving power and keeping the meter relatively responsive. To actually select your exposure settings, you have 2 main dials and a sub-dial. The shutter speed dial ranges from 1/2000th of a second down to 1 second in half-stop clicks, and the aperture range goes from f1 to f22, also in half-stop clicks. Inset within the aperture dial, you'll find the ISO selection, which can be changed by rotating the inner dial relative to the aperture dial itself. The marked settings range from 25 to 6400, and though this dial spins freely, you can't select in between settings or anything in between 6400 and 25 to, for example, meter at EI12 or 12800. That's kind of it. It's a pretty simple and well-made unit. The only other thing to mention is that the cost is about $71 US or 62 euros. It's obviously very important for a light meter, and I'm happy to say that this is very precise and it's very accurate. The half-stop precision that you get from the selection on the dials is more than enough for everyday shooting. You don't need to be spot metering and zone system metering everyday scenes, but it's also very accurate, which was apparently a weakness of the original, with very inconsistent performance reported by a lot of people. Not even just it consistently overexposing or underexposing by a stop or 2 stops or whatever, but varying in how off it was, which would be very annoying. But this thing hasn't let me down at all. I've shot everything from digital up to large format, high contrast, orthochromatic film with this stuff, and with this thing, and it has not let me down at all. I did sort of build up my trust before shooting some very important portraits on the large format camera, but they all came out perfectly. The negatives look absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend just putting this on your camera and doing what it tells you. It's very well built. I always record my B-roll for anything like this when I receive the item, because I usually do unboxings, and it's picked up a few scuffs here and there from the couple of times that I have dropped it out of my pocket, because I just keep it in my pocket when I'm using the large format camera or the like, or even sometimes with the SL66. And yeah, I've dropped it a few times, it's got a few scuffs, and it still works perfectly fine. The metal build has held up really well, where other meters maybe wouldn't hold up quite so well. You know, a plastic build like the other small compact meter I have, it's okay, but I wouldn't be as confident when I'm hiking that it's gonna, survive landing on a rock, where this thing has multiple times. One of my favorite things about the light meter is the ability to reposition the cold shoe. In the standard position where the shoe is on the left-hand side and the meter sticks out to the right, it covers the shutter speed dial and stops me from changing the ISO on my dice icon, which is, okay, that camera has a meter, but that's not the point. On my SL66, it then blocks the knob that unlocks the tilt. So being able to, when I'm going to go out with a particular camera, reposition the shoe in advance, just to have it in the best position for that camera. Okay, it is a bit fiddly to do, but it's something that's nice to have, and I'd rather have it than not. Like, you could just leave it in the central position and have it there forever if you wanted to, but being able to tailor it to any given camera is a nice little bonus. At 62 euros, I think the price is very fair and it presents very good value. I mean, my main meter is a Sekonic L758DR, a very high-end spot, incident, and flash meter for both photography and cinematography. Not that I use the cine functions. But for me, having this as an everyday secondary meter, when I don't want to carry the Sekonic around when it's the size of some of the cameras that I would use it with, 50, 60 euros is kind of what I would be willing to spend for something like this as a secondary backup meter. But given the metal build and how precise it has proven in my own personal experience, I think the price is more than justified. I mean, you look at something like the Dumo Meter D, I think it is, it's like 115 US, 100 euros-ish. I would not be paying 100 euros for a secondary meter just to have just in case. I'd just use my phone, with one of those light meter apps. But at this price, I'd be willing to, or more willing to recommend people move away from the light meter apps, which can be quite inconsistent, to something like this, which is a bit more dedicated and potentially reliable. Although those indicator lights are decently bright, they can be a bit washed out on very bright days. But I think the issue, as it's presented by a lot of people, is kind of overblown, because on those very bright days, you're going to cast a shadow, and you can just turn around and look at the meter reading in your shadow and look back at what you're doing. And if that's going to prevent you from getting the decisive moment, you should have already pre-metered, let's be realistic. My big gripe with this light meter is the use of 1632 cells. I don't like them. The 2032s are far more ubiquitous. They're like the USB Type-C of button cells, or the AA cell of button cells. You can get them just about anywhere. But 1632s, I had to order those online. And okay, I was able to get them from an Irish electronics dealer, but I still had to pay shipping on that pack of 5 batteries, making them more expensive. Given how power efficient this thing is, I'm not going to have to change them very often, but it's still annoying, and I'm concerned that by the time I get to the end of that pack, maybe the batteries might have just gone bad from age. Making it just introduces potentially a bit of waste, whereas 2032s, I can go to Tesco right now and get a pack in the next 10 minutes. I'm also not a huge fan of the use of a screw for the battery door, especially considering it's not a captive screw. I think for anything like this in electronics for photography, you should be using captive screws for this kind of thing. But given how power efficient this thing is with a rated battery life of over 60 hours, you're not going to be worrying about this too often. It's realistically something where if you're going on a trip, you can just sit down at home and change in a new cell before you go. I don't know how much of how much of that is a potential issue versus a real issue and me just kind of moaning that I don't like, non-captive screws. And that's kind of it. I mean, the free spinning dial has been a problem for a lot of people when selecting the ISO. Some people report that it's been nudged out of place. I haven't personally experienced that, but maybe it's because my meter is new, and as it loosens up over time, maybe it'll be more prone to getting knocked to the wrong ISO setting. I'm not too sure, but maybe for a version 3, they could introduce one of those like lift up collars, lift and twist things like the Fuji X Pro 2 or cameras like that, just to make it a bit more robust. But I understand that mechanically that's a lot more complex than the way they've implemented this here and would definitely drive up the cost. So maybe just make it harder to turn, so you actually have to make a conscious effort. I mean, you're probably only doing that once per roll, right? Shouldn't be a big deal if you really have to dig in with your nail and turn the dial. I don't think it would impact the user experience too much and would prevent some people from experiencing the dial getting knocked accidentally. So those are my thoughts on the TTArtisan Light Meter version 2. It's a very simple unit. It's just proven to be very well made and very dependable. Like I said, I've dropped it a few times onto rocks and it's still kicking. My main issue, as I've mentioned, is the batteries. I would have preferred the slightly larger size of the original, but with the precision of this unit, if it meant I could still use 2032s, but that is a relatively small gripe. I mean, it is very power efficient, so you're not going to be changing batteries all too often, all things considered. I don't really have a huge amount to say about this thing. It works, it's really nice, it's really good value. For me, as a secondary meter to go alongside my main Sekonic meter, the price is more than fair enough, and it's good enough that I think a lot of people should be moving away from phone apps and the like, and excuse to get off your phone realistically. And the fact that you can reposition the shoe to make it fit better on different cameras or different units is a nice little touch that just gives it a bit more general utility and, versatility in how you might employ it in your own kit. Makes the potential hassle of having like your shutter dial or having it clash with another, maybe an external viewfinder or a flash if you have one of those dual shoe adapters or something like that, just makes it easier to fit into your kit, reduces the friction of actually using it. So overall, I'm very happy. So I'd like to thank TTArtisan for sending it over, even if they didn't specifically request a video. But that's all I have to say for this video. So stay safe and bye bye for now. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at Shaka1277 for new pictures every day. If you liked this video and enjoy what I do on the channel, please consider subscribing or checking out my Patreon, where the tiers start at just €1 per month.